about today, you guessed it, that's AI. So AI is scaling multilingual content at an unprecedented rate nowadays. We all know it. And as AI systems increasingly rely on your content to generate search answers, to create ad copy, to respond to customer queries across all the markets that we cover, there's a critical question that emerges. Is it really scaling the right message? And if not, what to do? So the answer to this question depends entirely on what your content is actually communicating across languages, regions, and channels. And in today's session, what we're going to do is explore what governed multilingual content really looks like in the age of AI search. We're going to discuss how brands can maintain consistency at scale, how they can improve visibility across languages, and how they can build the content operating model needed to support both human audiences and AI-driven discovery. So we're really delighted to have you with us, and we really look forward to sharing insights that can help your organization stay visible, consistent, and competitive in an AI-first world. So to start with a few intros, I'll go first. This is me with shorter hair. I'm Odile, and the focus of my work at Locaria is on adaptation and linguistics, where governance makes a huge difference. And we really believe that global content excellence helps make a real difference in a world where the rules are constantly being rewritten.
My name's Rachel. I'm the Associate Director of Multilingual Marketing. My department looks after adaptation linguistics in the marketing sphere. So we work with clients both upstream in the planning phase and downstream in execution and analysis. So we really support building the foundation that's required for like strong content governance across languages and digital media channels.
Hi everyone, my name is Lorraine. So my focus is on organic optimization, mostly focused on SEO, nowadays also on GEO. Because of search being increasingly driven by LLMs, content governance is now becoming more important than ever in shaping how brands are understood and how they're discovered online, which is why we are talking to you today.
Cool. So before we dive into the solutions that we've worked on and we want to propose to you, I think it's really important to understand what the challenge is, because the rise of AI has introduced a new layer of risks that many brands haven't fully considered or understood yet. Because the thing today is that your content isn't just being read by customers, it's also being summarized and reused by AI systems that generate search results to answer questions and to represent your brand across different markets and languages. So this means that inconsistencies, outdated messaging, or gaps in governance can affect how your brand is understood, discovered, and trusted. And the better your content as a result, the better AI can represent your brand. And this is why we really can't stress enough the importance of language excellence. So the way that we search has changed. AI has disrupted the landscape. We all know it, how people find and engage with brands. We used to type keywords into Google and scan a list of links. Now we ask questions in natural language. We write a whole question as if we were chatting with a friend, and we receive a synthesized answer. When we think about it over the past 5 years, the way we search for things has changed incredibly. And the answer we get from AI is the result of LLMs that are analyzing, synthesizing, and summarizing various sources of content across the web. So content really must be adjusted to this new way of searching. And as AI scales content across more languages and more channels, the challenge is not just being visible, it's making sure that the right message is being surfaced consistently wherever people search. Originally, this slide actually compared SEO and GEO, but Google's recent guidance gave us a good reason to revisit that discussion. So thank you, Google. Their view is actually that optimizing for Gen AI search is really just optimizing for search. So we're still talking about SEO here. And honestly, most of the industry would agree that a lot of GEO is simply doing SEO well. However, there are two important nuances. So first of all, people are increasingly searching outside of Google. They're using AI assistants and other discovery platforms. So while the principles may be similar, the environment now for search is much broader. And secondly, GEO isn't limited just to traditional SEO channels. we have social media, shopping feeds, reviews, PR, and paid media. They can all influence how brands are understood and surfaced by AI systems. So yes, GEO is built on SEO foundations, but it's also wider than SEO, and that's the nuance that's often missing from the conversation. So LLMs don't just learn from your website, they draw information from a wide range of sources, including LinkedIn, Reddit, Wikipedia, YouTube, news sites, and online forums. And we put results from a recent study here of prompts across ChatGPT, Google AI Mode, and Perplexity. And it found out that LinkedIn was one of the most frequently cited sources. And the takeaway from this study, I think, is simple. AI really rewards content that is clear, that's consistent, and that's easy to understand wherever it appears online. So we're going back to what we said before about content excellence. And while AI cites third-party sources, your own channels remain the main foundation of your digital presence. You may not control what's said about your brand on Reddit or other external platforms, but you do control your website, you control your LinkedIn, YouTube, your social channels. So that's where content governance starts, and it will propagate through AI. So your website in particular is the source that AI systems look to for authoritative information. They'll take it as the most serious and trustworthy source of information. LLMs will learn from it. Google generates AI-powered experiences from it, and paid search is more and more adapting content from your website. So if your messaging is inconsistent across markets, across languages, AI will not correct those issues, it will amplify them. And at its core, AI is looking for content that it can easily understand and trust. So the brand that perform best in AI-driven search and discovery are those that communicate clearly, that maintain consistency across channels and markets, and that's really structure their content in a way that makes it easier to interpret meanings. So again, we're talking about linguistic and content excellence here. And as brands expand internationally, content governance becomes significantly more complex. That's the fun part. So multilingual content is often treated as a secondary priority. However, AI systems are more and more capable of understanding and of generating content across dozens of languages. While at the same time, many global organizations believe that they can scale their multilingual content through fragmented processes with different suppliers, different workflows, and different quality standards across markets. And this just doesn't work, because if you don't have a consistent approach, your messaging will diverge, especially in this wild environment that we're looking at nowadays. And as a result, your brand will be communicating different things in different languages. The meaning, the tone of voice, the core of your brand will be completely lost, and that will also create confusion for customers and for AI systems as well. So as you expand into new markets and languages, the challenge becomes even greater, because AI doesn't distinguish between a small inconsistency or a major one. It just learns from the content that's available to it. And we have to remind ourselves that trust is key, and specifically brand trust, which is built through quality and consistency. So today, consumer brands across multiple channels, people look at different channels before they make their decision. So they look at websites, social media, they look at reviews and online communities. And we have results from a review here that found that, for example, this research work before making a decision was the case for 70% of Gen Z and 69% of millennials. So as a word to finish this section, I would say that small details really matter. And we're talking about poor localization, we're talking about spelling mistakes or awkward machine translated copy, incorrect currencies, or inconsistent terminology. These can really quickly undermine your credibility. So you need to build trust, you need to have messaging that's consistent across every touch point, because what your users see on your website should be aligned with what they'll find on your social channels, in paid media, and across your wider digital ecosystem. And again, the answer is simple: content excellence.
Yeah, so we've looked at the context now and what's at stake. So now let's look at the method, how to establish good content governance for your brand. So in an ideal world, of course, we want a website that performs as well in its original version as it does in its international version. So what does governed content then actually look like? So we want sites to be correct from a linguistic perspective, nothing like a typo or wrong translation to instantly discredit your content. Consistent terminology across markets and channels is key, as this protects and maintains your brand voice. You want content that's optimized for local search intent, meaning it's suitable for the market that you're targeting. And the content should be clear and well structured, as Odile has already pointed out. So it's easy for search engines to index it and for LLMs to cite. So here's an illustration of how you can have a correct localization which might still miss its audience. Which kind of shows that just having localized content isn't enough. It should also be optimized for how local audiences might search. And this can vary market by market, even within the same language. So, for example, searching for running shoes, even though it's both Spanish, in Mexico, people would search for tenis, and in Panama, people would search for zapatillas. Same for the example here on the slide, plane ticket. If in one country a term is used more commonly compared to another country and the search volume differences are significant, you want to take that into account. So make people feel like content was written for them. So just keep in mind that content can be well written, but still missing the right keywords for the market could still hurt your discoverability. And then another great example of this is a content refresh project that we did for Skyscanner. So they had a lot of outdated blog content, like content with COVID references, and some of the content was simply translated and then posted in a market where it wasn't relevant. So, for example, they had a post about airline luggage restrictions, which was suitable for the European market, as it listed a lot of major European airlines. But the same article was then also posted in countries like Indonesia and Taiwan, where they have different airlines that are sort of the main airlines. So that needed to be adjusted and updated to reflect the actual airlines people would use in those markets. And then another good reason for doing this type of content refresh is refresh alone also tends to boost performance. So it's also just very important to not let your content just sit there. Refresh it so it keeps performing, especially as once you have it, it's much less of an investment to keep it updated rather than to keep churning out new content. Another important aspect of content governance is classifying content by risk. So for different content types, you would use different adaptation methodologies. So to do so, we would classify content by risk and impact and then align the workflow accordingly. So for example, high-risk content is your most exposed content, which may require the heaviest human input. So we're talking about home pages, hero pages, ad campaigns, brand narratives, that sort of thing. So for those content types, you'd leverage transcreation for the most creative copy with human localization on the more editorial long-form copy side. And then moving down the line, medium risk would cover important but functional content like product descriptions, category pages, that sort of thing. So there you might go for machine translation, but with human post-editing. And then lastly, low risk is the most repetitive or maybe functional type of content where speed is more important than nuance. What they do all have in common is a human is always involved, even if it's just for a final check. This is not just a quality consideration. As search and discovery evolves, the way content is adapted can directly influence how well AI systems understand your brand and the products and the topics that you want to be associated with. So that is because one of the biggest shifts happening with GEO is that discovery is becoming language-based and not crawl-based. So traditional search engines rely heavily on matching keywords and indexation, but LLMs work differently. So they recognize patterns, relationships, and associations across massive amounts of data and then generate the response that is statistically most likely to answer the prompt. So one of the biggest misconceptions right now is that GEO is about producing more content, but in reality, it's actually expertise, trust, and authority that's more important. So LLMs build what are essentially semantic neighborhoods. So they look for patterns or clusters of expertise across content. So if your content consistently covers related topics with clarity and authority, AI systems begin to associate your brand with that area of expertise. And ultimately, AI systems are trying to extract information efficiently and confidently. So if your content is vague or inconsistent or overly optimized for old SEO tactics, it becomes much harder for models to interpret and use that content. And we're also starting to see attempts to manipulate these systems, so particularly on Reddit, where marketers now know that AI tools often pull from these community discussions. But long-term, the strongest strategy is still the same: create genuinely useful, trustworthy content that builds a topical authority over time. So then, what do these relationships and what does consistency look like in practice? So we have a simple but very clear example here from Shark Ninja, which is a home appliances brand. So this is from their French own site and their French Amazon store. So they're using two different terms for the same product, one of which is actually also an incorrect term. So they've created the inconsistency between two different digital touch points. So for one product, they now have two different messages, and this is what content governance would prevent. And then another example that we found on the Shark website also is a section of content that has what we would call low semantic clarity, which impacts the natural flow. So it's got some odd sounding repetitions. Maybe it was an attempt to use certain keywords more, but it's difficult to read for both machines and humans. And aside from that, there's a few grammatical errors which send a poor trust signal, again, to both machines and humans.
So we've looked at how to establish good governance for your brands. Odile and Lorraine have laid out quite a lot of things. Let's look by extension to see what that governance means for performance and how it affects it. So is your content the answer when your audience asks AI in every language? This is really key for any brands who are perhaps one language centric. Or maybe they write their content in English and then they do the simple translation that we mentioned earlier on. And what does that mean for multilingual discoverability? So the risk here is that inconsistency across multilingual sites is actually more common and less monitored. Inconsistent multilingual content really produces an inconsistent brand identity across language contexts. That means your brand's understood differently depending on the language that the user queries in. And the result is your brand says different things in different languages. This example we have here for the laptop for gaming. So the word gaming is really key to get the right audience. In this case, it's been translated by machine translation, whereas it actually could have been left in English for the Spanish Mexico market speaker in Mexico. A market where your content is consistent is a market where you lose control of how your brand's represented in those AI answers. And the risk is you become irrelevant to your audience. As we mentioned earlier, trust is a really important factor. We only have seconds these days to capture attention. So something like an incorrect term could cause confusion and distrust, and then you've lost your target audience. But what does it mean for performance and your paid ad campaigns? So as we mentioned, content excellence is like really important because these days, thanks to Google's AI Max, the landing pages really can become ad input. Paid search draws from the same ecosystem now as the areas that Lorraine and Odile have already mentioned. So AI Max can read your landing pages. There are also many brands out there that have multiple websites, so sometimes that ecosystem can be really big. And they use those to generate ad copy. So that could be the headlines, the assets, whatever it be, site links. It will also use those landing pages to try and match the ads to the queries and maybe even queries that you haven't explicitly bid on. That means your website is not just a destination anymore. It's the input to your paid campaigns. So if you've got inconsistent messaging, poor localization, ungoverned multilingual content, then you will produce inconsistent ads at scale. However, a website with good governance, with optimized multilingual content, can really directly feed better paid performance. This means we've got a loop now. The loop was always there, but it's been made stronger and been made more important. The loop is between the owned media and the paid media, and it really is key. So you have governed landing pages, you have better AI max inputs, you get stronger ad copy, you get more relevant targeting. And then further down the line, you get more clicks, you get more conversions, which is especially what most brands want, particularly e-commerce brands. Then we can see from the performance data what resonates in each market and different terms. Like some of the terms that Lorraine mentions in different Spanish-speaking countries could be surprising for brands that are maybe not aware, but we can use that and turn it into feedback for the content strategy, and that in turn improves the own content and makes it stronger. So this loop is really important, but it only works when the foundation is clean and it's not fragmented at the source. So what affects upstream downstream principle that I mentioned at the very, very beginning? So as you'd expect, if upstream governance slips, then every downstream surface slips with it. It really is quite logical. That means if you've got a broken source, then AI, discovery, ad copy, performance, anything will degrade from that source. But when governance is strong, AI isn't a risk. It doesn't have to be a risk. It can be a really powerful amplifier for your content. So let's sum up. We've looked at quite a lot of areas. We've kind of done a whistle-stop tour. Let's have a look to see what we think are the key elements here. So we think there's 4 key elements when it comes to optimal international content governance. Number 1, you don't want your brand to mean different things in different markets. So don't outsource your brand to ungoverned local suppliers or to AI without human oversight. We really do want to emphasize that. So any local execution that you have, it needs to align with a global framework and present a unified voice. Number 2, AI is here to stay. We want it to be a driver though, not a roadblock. But without subject level expertise, it really could expose governance gaps. Governance creates the structure and semantically consistent foundation that allows AI to perform as intended across every language, particularly with natural language, as Lorraine mentioned before. Number 3, search engines have actually always favored content. Anyone who works in the sphere already knows this. So AI is obviously impacting search behaviors, but content excellence is more important than ever. And fragmented multilingual content could hurt your visibility in both traditional and AI-driven search. And then finally, number 4, ungoverned content creates unnecessary waste. Nobody likes waste in any kind of area of life. But that in practice could mean having to rework content, which is a waste of resource and budget and time. But if governance is there in place and it's strong, then it will compound every effort that you make for your brand and for your content. Thank you very much for joining us. That's us taking you through whether AI is scaling your multilingual content in the right place. If we have any questions, we can have a look at them now.
Otherwise, guys, feel free to get in touch whenever you need. You have our contacts, I believe, so we'll be happy to take any questions or take the discussion further offline at any point. All right. Thanks everyone so much for attending. It's been a pleasure. And
thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Have a good rest of your day, everyone.
Bye. Bye.